Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 318. Today, we're talking all about homeschooling multiple neurotypes, kids who have different kinds of profiles, and how the heck are we supposed to teach them all at once when we have all sorts of neurodivergencies to deal with. I've got some answers for you. I've also got some commiseration for you. So this is going to be a good one. Before we begin, I want to give a special thank you to CTC Math for continuing to sponsor us and for making my math life easy. I've been a customer for years and years and years before they ever sponsored this podcast. And I am so grateful a great math program like CTC exists. And I'm so grateful for their support of the homeschooling community. You can check them out at ctcmath.com or over on the show notes for this episode for a special offer just for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about them later on in this episode. In the meantime, pop those earbuds in and let's get on with today's show. So if you've ever thought, how am I supposed to teach all these kids at once? There is so much going on in the brains of the kiddos that I have at home. I'm just not equipped to do it. One of them needs me constantly while another one wants independence. My gifted kiddo is racing ahead and I can't keep him in curriculum, while my ADHD kiddo needs constant support and needs me sitting almost on top of them to get them going in anything that they need to do. One thrives with structure, another melts down because of it. If that's you, you're not alone, and this episode will help you stop trying to homeschool everyone the same way and start building rhythms that honor the different brains without you going crazy in the process. Okay, so I have had so many experiences like this in my time. I was a gifted specialist who worked in the school system, and during that time, my main job was to meet with the different teachers in the grade levels I was assigned to. I was very, very fortunate. During my time as a gifted specialist, I was in a district where there was one of me for every 2 grade levels. So I didn't have to spread myself thin across the entire district. I got to focus on 26 classrooms, 13 second grade classrooms and 13 third grade classrooms at that time. And it was great because my primary focus could be meeting the needs of the kids in that span of grades. So I could go in, I could assess kids, I could check out the referrals from the different teachers, and I could go into the classrooms and teach group problem solving and creative thinking lessons so that I could see if maybe there was a spark or a kid who was demonstrating cognitive giftedness without being a high achiever, which is one of those nuances that a lot of people misunderstand when it comes to gifted kids. What I found in the process, which I think was just one of those things that set me up to be able to homeschool my own neurodivergent kids, was that there were so many asynchronicities in the neurodivergence in those 2 grade levels. So yes, I had my gifted kids. Yes, I had my twice exceptional kids, but there were also kiddos with ADHD or kiddos with sensory processing disorder that had some cognitive abilities or creative thinking skills that were untapped because their neurodivergencies were getting in the way. And so I was able to help teachers meet the needs of those different kids in conjunction with what they were doing, with what the special needs teachers were doing, and what I needed to do with my own gifted kids throughout the course of my years at that school district. So I got to meet with kids individually. I really got to know kids, and I got to serve my gifted kids in unique ways. So it set me up for those times around the table when I had one kiddo who was deep diving into an interest of theirs. Maybe it was when my oldest was so fascinated by trains, he knew everything about every train that had ever existed in history. He could tell you all sorts of facts down to technicalities, and he watched videos and documentaries, and he built model railroads with his grandfather, and he watched the documentaries and could talk about how the tracks were laid from coast to coast and what happened when we moved from steam engines to electric trains, and all about high-speed magnetic trains around the world. And he would be fascinated by that. While I had another who needed to keep herself organized and needed the support to get things done, all while having toddlers in the mix that needed connection. And some of my kids needed quiet to be able to focus, and others needed lots of things going on around them so their brains could constantly tap into the novelty. Here's the thing. This is no earth-shattering news if you're homeschooling any kind of neurodivergent kid. You know this, and you're probably listening to this going, oh my gosh, thank goodness I am not alone. It's not just my home. When you're homeschooling anyway, you're working to get to know the individuals that are in front of you, and you're meeting their needs so that they can move forward and learn and grow in the ways that their unique brains need to every single day. When you are homeschooling neurodivergent kids, you add an extra layer of challenge to that because you have to meet them where their brains are wired on top of where their interests are. A lot of times when we are homeschooling or when we're talking in homeschooling circles, many parents, whether that's you, whether that's somebody you know and is trying to give you advice, we fall back on or try to find some kind of solution, usually focusing on the curriculum, right? We're on a search for the perfect curriculum. We want to find the best curriculum for ADHD brains, or the best curriculum for dyslexic learners, or the best curriculum for gifted learners. And the truth of the matter is, that's not the solution. The real solution is building systems that work for the kids that we have. And when we've built systems that work, or at the very least, a toolbox of strategies that may work now and then may work again later when we need to pick it back up, but having multiple systems from which to draw, it doesn't really matter at that point what the actual curriculum is, because we're able to use those systems to incorporate any curriculum or materials or strategies or resources to meet our kids where they are, move them forward in ways that tap into their unique learning profile. The system that we're going to talk a little bit about today is rotating, having stations, and solo work. So, first of all, let's just talk about why having multiple neurotypes in our home feels so hard. It's hard because our kids have very distinct, very specific needs, and those needs are neurodivergent. They are atypical from the general population. And there's this feeling or this myth that our kids should be able to do the things that they need to do, right? Especially, oh my gosh, especially if they're gifted, right? They should be able to achieve, because isn't that what giftedness is? No, it's not. Achievement is completely separate from giftedness. Some of our most gifted individuals are just really low achievers or unmotivated learners, while others are extreme achievers. Achievement isn't giftedness. It's just a kid who's been able to tap into what their brain needs in order to check the boxes and do the things. And oftentimes our neurodivergent kids cannot achieve without a great deal of support. And then as we're scrolling through social media, or we're watching YouTube videos, or reading blog posts, or listening to podcasts, we are given all sorts of information about what the perfect curriculum is, or what the best homeschool life looks like, or how our kids learn best, when the truth of the matter is, that is an individual thing. We should not all be doing the same thing. Different brains need different inputs. For example, gifted brains crave challenge. Whether that challenge is academic, creative, logical, abstract, whatever it is, a gifted brain craves challenge. It's why so many of our gifted kids are underachieving. It's because they get stuff really, really quickly and they don't need the repetition. So they tune out as soon as it feels like they've already gotten it or like they're never going to use it. So it doesn't really matter. While an ADHD child craves novelty, their brain needs the constant input that they get from a dopamine surge. And dopamine comes from finding things that are novel, that are new, that are interesting, and that are keeping them hooked. And then an autistic child often craves predictability. So they need structures in place. They need their routine set in stone with a little bit of deviation, but they tend to be more inflexible and want things to be predictable. And then if you've got a kiddo who struggles with anxiety, they crave reassurance. And so they need constant input from you. They need to know that they're in a safe place and that their safety is of utmost importance to you and that you're going to reassure them. And then a dyslexic kiddo needs accommodations. They need the curriculum that is maybe on grade level for them in a certain area adjusted so that they can understand it. You may need to read it to them. You may need to scribe for them. And so trying to make those different learning profiles all learn in the same way creates not only friction for you, but frustration and friction for them. And so when we have multiple neurotypes, especially when we've got kids who are twice exceptional and maybe they are gifted and dyslexic or gifted with anxiety or ADHD, now we're dealing with multiple neurotypes within the same child. So we need to make sure that we're accommodating for each of the different things that they need. And this can get overwhelming. It's important to remember, though, that fair is not everyone getting the same thing. Fair is everyone getting what they need, which is why our kiddos with multiple neurotypes or our families with multiple neurotypes need constant adjustment. And this is where it gets challenging for us. So we want to figure out ways for that family profile that we're homeschooling to make sure we stop becoming managers of curriculum and start managing energy within our home. So we're going to talk about what I like to call the homeschool energy framework. We want to ask ourselves each day, each segment of each day, whenever we need to, who needs me most in this moment? What do they need from me? When do they need me? And what can happen independently? So a lot of times homeschool days fail or feel like they're a failure because we start to schedule by subject or activity rather than support needs. I've got a couple kids who have been notoriously like me and have been high energy in the evening and low energy in the mornings. And then I've got a couple other kids who have been high energy in the mornings or early afternoons. And so we need to make sure that we're meeting them where they need to be met and we're managing their energy along with our own. So who needs me most? When do they need me? And what can happen independently? So once we have understood that, once we've thought about that, and adjusted, we can then move on to the next step. But before we do, and before I talk about it, I want to just mention that this can change. And it can change day to day, it can change week to week, it can change year to year. And so we need to manage our expectations really carefully and really honestly, because when we're homeschooling neurodivergent kids, it is not going to be smooth sailing all the time, nor is the same child going to get the same amount of energy year to year. I'm going to give you an example. Most of my kids will half jokingly talk about one particular child being my favorite. And that's because right now they remember the last couple of years, and really the last, I would say 2 to 3, even 4 years, because that particular child's activities outside the home took up a lot of my physical time and energy. That particular child over the last couple of years did many, many activities outside the home, including additional training, additional one-on-one coaching, and activities that needed a parent to be with them and a parent to be driving them places. And because my other children were old enough to be left at home to do things independently, I didn't drag them all over the place and bring them with me. So they will often say, those ones that were at home will say that was just my favorite child. But they don't remember the years previous to these last 2 to 3 to 4 when another one of my children needed a great deal of time outside the home and one-on-one time with me. That particular child was going to constant therapies. They were seeing therapists and coaches and learning tutors for dyslexia, for sensory processing challenges, for anxiety. And we went to occupational therapists, physical therapists. We went to prescribed play groups. We went to learning tutors for dyslexia support. And we were outside the house or grouping our learning and activities around what this child's therapies required of us. And so the co-ops that we were part of, the homeschool playgroups that we were a part of, were all geared towards getting that particular child what they needed at that time. And so for about 4 years of our homeschool, all of our schedules and routines were focused around when therapies needed to happen. And they don't remember that because, number one, they were younger. Number two, I just rolled it and incorporated it into the homeschool activities we were doing anyway, because at that time, the kids were all younger. And so they had me choosing their schedule for them instead of me scheduling things around what they needed to reach their goals. So activities changed because of the ages of the kids, the needs of the kids, and how we could structure other activities in conjunction with what needed to happen at that moment. And then even before that, very few of them remember all of the time that was poured into my oldest, because at that time, we're talking 8 to 10 to 15 years ago, all of my activities centered around my oldest child because he was the one that needed the most support at that time. He had therapies, he had coaching sessions, he had activities like Lego robotics and different things that brought us out of the home for him. And the younger ones, who were very young at the time, because there's an age gap between my first and my second, and then a bigger one between my first and my third, and an even bigger one between my first and my fourth, all of our activities centered around what that child's needs were at that moment. So I was intentionally thinking about which child needed me the most and needed the most support, whether that was for therapies, social activities, academic activities, and then eventually arts and fine arts activities and coaching. And so creating the rhythm and the flow around where the energy is needed most as a family, as a parent, as a homeschool teacher, and as each child individually grows is important. And unfortunately, our kids are never going to completely understand what is being done to allocate that energy until they're grown and gone and have children of their own and actually experience that divvying up of the energy. So when we think about who needs me most, when do they need me most, and then what can happen independently throughout that time, then we can start adjusting for the rotation, the station, and the solo framework that we're going to create. So I've been using CTC Math for years now, and I have to say, one of the things I love most about it is its adaptability. CTC gives you access when you subscribe to all of their levels. You get access immediately to grades kindergarten through calculus. So it's perfect for kids who have an asynchronous learning profile, meaning they are many different ages at once, because sometimes concepts will come really quickly for asynchronous kids, and sometimes they'll come a little bit more slowly. But CTC, having all of those levels up front, right at your fingertips, allows your kiddos to work at their own pace. If they understand something and they get the concept super quickly, they can accelerate through it and do multiple levels in one day, sometimes even getting through multiple grade levels in a school year. And then when they hit some of the more challenging math and maybe it's not as intuitive for them, they can slow down and they can take a little bit longer. It is perfect for neurodivergent families, especially those who are homeschooling asynchronous and or gifted kiddos. If you're looking for a new math program for your family and you're looking for one that is easily tailored to the kids that are in your home, the learning profiles you currently have, and it's completely affordable, one price for all grade levels for all of your family and kids, and comes with a money-back guarantee and people who really truly care about your kids learning their math, you need to check out ctcmath.com. Now, you could either go over straight to ctcmath.com and check it out, or you could head over to the show notes for this episode or in the description on your favorite podcast app and click through that. When you click through that, it automatically applies a special offer that CTC has just for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners, and I'd hate to have you miss out on that if you were purchasing. It's a great deal. It's actually the deal that we use too, because I do subscribe and pay for my subscription. I've been a customer of CTC Math for close to a decade now, and I still pay for my subscription. And I'd love for you to be able to take advantage of the same offer. So check them out, ctcmath.com, or head over to the show notes at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast and click on the CTC link through there, and it will automatically apply the special discount that it has for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Okay, so we have thought about who needs me most, we've thought about when they need me, and then we've also thought about what they can do independently. Now we're going to talk about the rotate plan, the rotate part of that framework. This is perfect for younger learners, for kids who need direct teaching, and for high support seasons. So for example, let's look at our different children. So let's say we have child A, B, and C, and child A can work pretty independently. Child B needs to work with a parent, and child 3 needs something very structured. So we're going to set up independent work, we're going to set up one-on-one time, and we're going to set up like kind of a station of some sort, and we're going to rotate. So we'll get our first kiddo set up with something they can do independently. And we'll assess, do they need to do that in a different room? Can they do that in a different part of the room? Or do they need to do that nearby? And can they do that without being distracted? Because I will be working with child B. Child B needs one-on-one support for this specific topic and at this specific time. So I'm going to focus my energy while child A is working independently on child B and what that kiddo needs at that particular moment. And then child C is going to be working in some kind of creative station. Maybe that is something that I have strewed out. So if you've followed this podcast for a long time, or if you've read on my blog, you know I've talked about strewing in the past. This was a strategy that I used a lot when my kids were younger and when I had kids doing multiple things And I used it a lot when I had a couple kids that needed me a lot during the night, but I still had several that were waking up early. So I would strew activities that my kids could do independently and maybe would pique their interest, and they could get started on that, or they could do that when they had time or when I needed to work with somebody else. So if you're interested in understanding kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to strewing, I will link to a couple different posts and podcast episodes that I've talked about or written about that topic on the website in the past, and you can go look into that more. But strewing is something that you could do. You could set out some kind of creative activity that your kids could just explore on their own. You could also set out something that's more structured, like Snap Circuits. Snap Circuits is a favorite of ours. It comes with an experiment book, and so there's lots and lots of different things that the kids can do in that section. Maybe you set out watercolors or chalk pastels with an online tutorial, or Play-Doh or kinetic sand or a sensory bin, depending on your kid's age. Then, after you've spent some time on that and you've gotten child B to wherever they need to be, you rotate. And the kids rotate through these different sections: independent work, working one-on-one with you, and then some kind of creative station throughout the day. The benefits to this is it's very predictable. They get predictable attention from you. There are reduced interruptions, and there's realistic expectations. You can use, if you need to, some kind of visual timer. You can just have some blocking going on, like when we finish. You can flip the attention as you notice that kids' attention is waning. And then you can also have some transition supports, like if you're working one-on-one with a kiddo or they're working independently, you can say, when you've reached this goal, you know that you're okay to move on. And you set up those expectations in the beginning. Okay, so that's the rotate plan. You can also incorporate the station plan. And this is inspired by the classroom theory or practice of centers. And it's especially good for kids who need to keep things moving, and there are ways to keep it homeschool friendly. So you may have a station set up that's, reading activities, a creativity station, a project that the kids are working on, one that's parent led. So there's your one-on-one time, and then movement. And your kids kind of rotate through the different stations as the day goes on. Or you can if you all work well together, you can work through the different stations together. So depending on your kids' ages, your kids' needs, they can rotate through independently, they can rotate through on a set amount of time, or they can all rotate through together with you. So you could have different activities like their independent reading activities, or a drop everything and read station where everybody takes 20 minutes to just read, and then some creative projects that everybody's working on and they can work independently on there. This is a good place to put in lap books if your kids prefer those, or unit studies. This is really good for kids with ADHD because the novelty idea is built into the framework. It's also good for sensory seeking kids because they're moving in between each. So it gives them that brain break and that movement break, along with kids who struggle with endurance, kids who just don't have the capacity or the stamina to keep going at something for a long period of time. I remember when my kids were very young and we would use this kind of strategy. I had a couple kids who didn't have a lot of stamina when it came to sitting down, focusing, and getting things done in a consistent manner. One of my kids in particular needed lots of breaks. And so when we would work on a unit study together, or we would be working on just different activities, I would break things up. I told you a couple episodes ago when we were talking about ADHD and executive function that I would sometimes cut apart the math problems and scatter them around the house for him to find. We did the same thing when we did unit studies. Instead of doing our unit studies as big projects, we would use lap books, and you can look up lap books. You can actually find resources on my site. I'll link to some of those in the show notes too. But the best thing about lap books was you'd come up with a whole unit study project or research project, really, but it would be in bite-sized chunks because you would create these file folders and little mini books within the file folders. So you would just be doing bite-size pieces of the unit study at a time, and you were able to space it out. And my kids really liked that. So this gave the kids a chance to kind of rotate through different things. And so you could use the same strategies in that way. And there are lots of different resources for creating different stations at home in different ways. And again, I'll link to some of those in the show notes so you can get some ideas if you want to try that rotation and the rotation plan and the station plan. And then we have our solo plan. So this is for gifted learners or highly self-directed learners or older kids. So solo does not mean abandoned. It does not mean just letting them off on their own. It does not mean unsupported. Solo means giving your kids ownership of something that they want to learn about, or they're interested in learning about, or they're good at learning about. It means giving them autonomy to have a say in some of the learning that they're doing, as well as accountability. So you're setting up little checkpoints and checking in with them regularly. This is a chance for you to kind of let your kids start to spread their wings and give them a safety net that they can fall back on if they need it, so that they can have your support and they can continue to scaffold and grow in independence. So this could be like project boards. Inside the Learners Lab, every month we have a different theme. And within those themes, I give families an opportunity to work on the themes together. So for example, this month, as this podcast is airing, inside the Learners Lab, we're talking about building friendships. Next month, we're going to be focusing on optimism and staying optimistic and positive, because a lot of our gifted kids and twice exceptional kids and neurodivergent kids kind of like walk around with that woe is me or black cloud hanging over their head. I've been guilty of that too. So we're going to be talking about different ways to stay optimistic. This month, again, we're talking about building friendships. Every single month, with whatever theme we're talking about, we have a choice board in the lab so that families can work on the theme together. So I meet with the kids and the whole family. A lot of times parents come too, and we talk about the overarching theme. So I give them a little kind of mini lesson, what it means to be building friendships, why it's important, why a lot of times our creative and our bright kids and our differently wired kids, friendships don't look the same as neurotypical friendships, why my oldest son's best friends when he was 12 were in their 70s and 80s, and how that's perfectly normal for a gifted kid. We talk about that. And then I introduce the project or choice board for that month. And it's got 9 different activities that they can choose from to work on as a family to learn more and practice the skill of whatever it is we're working on that month. So again, building friendships. So there's 9 different choices. They can use the choice board or the project board like a tic-tac-toe game, where they choose 3 activities and do all of them diagonally or all of them horizontally or vertically and cross them off. They can choose if they've got a lot of free time that month or it's a topic they really need to work on. They could do them all. Or if it's a very busy month or they're overwhelmed, they can just choose one activity to do. And so maybe you come up with a choice board for your kids to choose from. Or you have these weekly check-ins where every Friday you meet to go over what you did for the week, and then you meet the following Monday to kind of plan out what the week's going to look like. Or you come up with a self-directed learning contract that you sign and your kids sign, and there's clear expectations for what's going to come out of it. So here's the thing. When we're managing and homeschooling many different neurotypes, either within the same child or in multiple kids, we don't need one specific framework. Like I said before, it's not about the curriculum. It's about building tools and frameworks and structures that you can pull from and you can mix and match. So most families need a mix of the different types of frameworks and plans. So you want to use the rotation idea, the stations idea, and the solo idea in conjunction with one another and kind of like mix them up. or trade them in and out. So for example, instead of using one system, you might have morning stations set up, especially if you're not a morning person and one or more of your kids is. And then maybe during midday, when you're feeling kind of at your highest energy point, you're doing the rotation. So you're meeting one-on-one with each kid at least one part of that day. And then in the afternoon, everybody's working on their solo projects. Or maybe you're in a really tough season and one of your kids needs a lot more of you than others. And so everybody's pretty much working on solo projects and just checking in with you a couple times a week. We've had several consecutive seasons like that. And it's been because different kids have needed different things from me. So last year and the year before, my second oldest child was getting ready to embark on the college audition project for studying a BFA in musical theater or acting. And that took a lot. It took a lot of extra coaching. It took a lot of extra time in theaters and in dance studios and in recording studios to record pre-screen videos. It took a lot of time and support writing dozens. We're talking upwards of 50 different college essays, applying to over 30 schools, auditioning for about 25 of those schools, and just balancing time and travel and virtual auditions, and then making the decisions about that, where they were going to go, what they were going to, exactly which degree they were going to study. And so during that time, I was on the road a lot. And so my other kids who were homeschooling did a lot of individual and solo work. And then this last year, we had one who was getting adjusted to their freshman year of college, and then another child who was going through some serious and scary health issues. And so again, my time was spent supporting one child who was really justifiably nervous about these different health scares and surgeries and recoveries and different things like that, while also being available on the phone quite often to talk down the child who was away from home for the first time. And so we did a lot of rotation as well as solo work. We are entering a season coming up where a lot of those health issues are stabilized, or at least the scary stuff is kind of ruled out so we can turn some attention in other directions. And the college kid is settled and working a summer job and ready to go back. And so the attention can be turned to the other two children who did a lot of solo exploration and work over the last couple of years. And I've expressed that to the other two kids. Like, I need to catch up on my work. I'm very, very behind on podcast recording, on coaching sessions, on replays, on different things that I need to do in my business and in the Learners Lab and in this podcast, and with reaching out on social media and offering free resources to share with you. And so I need to be spending time doing that, and I need to be spending time with the other kids. And so my attention has to shift. And so we need to remember that we're going to have times when we need more rotation, times when we need more stations so they're working independently, and times when they're doing more solo and project work so that they can have the autonomy, but you can also have the time that you need. And then there are times that we're going to be rotating them around and we're going to be mixing and matching. And so the key takeaway that I want you to have when you leave this episode is that your homeschool doesn't need one perfect system or one perfect curriculum. It needs enough flexibility so that your different brains and the different neurotypes in your home can thrive. Because when you have varying neurotypes, when you have neurodivergent kids, when you have gifted and twice exceptional children, when you have autistic children, when you have children with anxiety or OCD or perfectionism or medical challenges, things are going to happen that are going to derail you and that are going to blow your systems out of the water. And you're going to need to be able to pull other systems out of your back pocket to try in those seasons. And you need to know that some seasons will look like complete disasters, and that's okay. Because as long as you're continuing to move forward in slight ways here and there, it does all work out in the end. It does all even out, and your kids will be ready for what they're ready for when they're ready for it. And as long as you've got these different strategies, you can meet them where they are when they're ready and when you're ready. We'd love to have you inside the Learner's Lab because we talk about these things all the time, and we help build rhythms that fit real families, not an idealized homeschool schedule or a home rhythm that doesn't work for neurodivergent kids. We are there supporting you where you're at, when you're there, and moving you forward. If you're not ready to join the Learner's Lab yet, that's no problem either. The podcast comes out every week. There are hundreds and hundreds of articles on my website that you can read and pull for free. And you can always reach out to me via email, and I'll support you in any way that I can. I'm going to be back same time, same place next week. And we are going to be talking about some of those kind of sibling squabbles that happen, and especially when there's uneven needs. I talked a little bit about that in this podcast episode, how we've had different seasons where one kid has needed me more than another. And that is very common in neurodivergent households. And so we're going to talk more deeply about that next week and build a toolbox together so that we can meet the kids' needs where they are and however they need them at that moment. So stay tuned. If you don't subscribe already, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss an episode. And then share these with anybody that you feel can benefit from the resources that are shared here, because we lift each other up together. We grow as a community together, and through that community, we grow as parents and as individuals. And we're all here to support each other. And so anyone who needs support, I want them to be able to get it. All right, don't forget to check out CTC Math if you're looking for a great math curriculum for your next year. They're wonderful and adaptable and independent. You can have your kids learn to use it independently, and it's a great resource for being able to adjust up and down to your kids' needs as they need them. Check out the resources that I talked about in this episode over on the show notes page at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. You can find links to all the podcasts and all the show notes there, as well as all the free resources. We have a really great resource available right now. It's top 10 executive function hacks for neurodivergent families. And it is a free ebook designed to help you meet your kids where they are in their executive function challenges and kind of hack your way to help them get some success and some quick wins so that they can build off of them and you can build off of those as well. So check that out over on the show notes for this episode. Again, raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And we will be back same time, same place next week. I hope you enjoy your kids this week. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.